Okay, maybe not happy. Monday. It's Monday. How's it going? It's my sports today.
If we were going to pick one of the 7 dwarves, I'd go with Grumpy if I were you, Sean.
Yeah, I was going to start saying
Just
happy
being
Monday,
honest.
but we're going to be talking about some Denver Broncos football today. There is not much happy about it. I'm Sean Drotar. That's Nate Lundy.
Hi.
Danny Bailey's in the booth that makes all of this work. So everything you're seeing and hearing, thanks to Danny on a Monday morning. The Broncos have their home opener. They lose 13-6 in a game that, quite frankly, was not even as close as that score would indicate. The Broncos had 3 first downs in the first half, 1, 2, 3 in total. And it didn't get much better. We'll have Troy Renck of the Denver Post to join us a little later to break down some of Sean Payton's decisions within the game, questionable ones, talking about when you're looking at analytics and when you're looking at just overall football decisions, more on the onsides kick a little bit later, or the lack thereof, more accurately. How do you feel about having to go 81 yards with 9 seconds? Good odds?
It's all a joke.
In between.
All right, it's all a joke.
But for the Broncos, again, this offense is problematic at best. They have 2 touchdowns in 2 games. They narrowly avoided, quite frankly, being shut out at home for the first time ever. And they really didn't give Broncos fans anything to cheer about from the offensive side. Another good but not great performance by a defense that was dramatically overtaxed and let down by an offense that, again, 3 and outs are consistent, a complete and total lack of creativity in play calling. You're talking about bland and predictable offenses. It looks like the Broncos, to me, Nate, run a preseason offense all the time. And it's worth noting, we'll break it down over the course of this week, but I talked about it on Friday. I talked about it on social media over as the game went along. And the Broncos now have had 19 games under Sean Payton. All but 4 of them have been with Russell Wilson. The others 2 with Bo Nix, 2 with Jared Stidham. If you could go look at the film of those 19 games and tell me which player was the quarterback in any given game, if you blurred them out, Nate, I'd be surprised. The offense just looks like the offense. At a certain point, it's not the quarterback. It's Sean Payton's show.
Well, and look, I understand some of the humor that could go along with what I'm about to say, but with what took place during the offseason, I put out on Twitter that I wasn't so sure that I didn't want them to jettison Sean Payton and keep Russell Wilson. And I had a lot of folks that were like, you are a bleeping idiot.
Yep.
And they didn't use the bleep. That talked to me about how much they were an idiot. I got to be honest, I would have been okay jettisoning both of them. But I think now some of why that was a concern of mine is starting to come to fruition, and you're seeing it with your own eyes. Look, there's a lot to be able to take away from this game. And you say that you didn't give, anybody any fun from an offensive standpoint. I got to be honest, that flea flicker was right in front of me where I was sitting, and that was fun to watch.
Okay, I take it back. That was fun moment. That was
fun. And that showed some creativity, the most creativity I've seen out of Sean Payton in a season and a half. So look, there's a reason that I said from the very beginning, and you said as well, Sean, bet the under on the total wins. Any folks, including God love him, because I do love Cody to death, but Cody Rourke was dead wrong when he talked about this team winning 10 games. It wasn't gonna happen. There's not enough talent on this team. And now we're getting tortured by the fact that not only is there not enough talent on this team, there's not enough talent wearing a headset. That has to change. If you're so damn good and you're such an offensive mind and you've got a Super Bowl and you've got the ring, show it. And right now he's not showing it, and it's just pissing every Broncos fan off.
Yeah, and that's the part I think that's interesting. And the idea of, for Broncos fans, the expectation that they might somehow be a lot better. Now, we've been saying all along, off season, all along, that the Broncos are going to slide backwards from the 8 wins. Even before they got Bo Nix, even before all of these, the lines came out in Vegas, they were going to backslide from the 8 wins. They're in a tough AFC West. The Broncos, by the way, already all alone in the cellar of the AFC West at 0-2, the only team winless in the AFC West. But the running game, again, this game finished, remember, 13-6. So at no point was it out of hand score-wise. At no point. The Broncos running backs carried the ball 15 times. The running backs, 15 carries in total. Now, if you take out Tyler Beatty's 1 carry for 16 yards, and after getting 16 yards, he never carried the rock again. Someone feel free to explain that to me. Javonte Williams and Julian McLaughlin combined for 14 carries for 23 total yards. In case you're doing the quick math, Yeah, that's fewer than 2 yards a carry. 1.6 to be honest. And Javonte averaged 1.5, but if you think, that really hurt McLaughlin, McLaughlin averaged 2. This team either can't run the ball, won't run the ball, or the worst possible, the poo-poo platter of both.
Yeah. It's all pretty ugly from a running standpoint. But can I pour lemon juice on the wound?
I mean, it's Monday.
You all right with that? You want to you just want to get it out of the way? You want to get it out of the way? Check this out. Here's your Sean speak for the day.
Not me.
Not Sean Drotar speak.
Okay.
Sean Payton speak. He was asked to start off his Zoom presser this morning about what goes into the in-game running back rotation. That's a polite way of a reporter to say, what the hell are you doing? Okay. That's the polite way for a reporter to ask the question. It's on the screen for you, but I'm going to read it to you just in case, because I want you to just hear how this sounds coming verbally out of someone's mouth. Fair question. When we had the additional spot, and obviously with Audric Estime down, then it's about trying to find touches for the third back. Much easier with a rotation of 2. Getting the third back involved, sometimes it's special teams, sometimes in the passing game, and it was a good run by him. It's something where you take notice of it, though. It's something as a play caller, as someone who's looking at the game, I've got to be able to see that. He is a player, though, who had his name on a lot of different plays that either were red zone or situational plays that we weren't able to get to. It's not intentional. It's not like, hey, we're not aware. You're just in the flow of the game, and you have to be better that way.
Okay.
All right. First and foremost, let me start here. Sean, shut up. For crying out loud, shut up with the coach speak. I get it. It's what you're supposed to do. Sean Payton gets paid to sit at a podium, or in this case, on a Zoom call, and do coach speak, right? But here's the thing. This is now the start of the 9th season since Peyton Manning was here. The 9th season since Von Miller and that defense won Super Bowl 50. This is the start of the 9th year. Broncos fans are tired of the crap. Could you just come out and actually be honest and transparent for once? And I know I'm talking to the wall. This is the same as me bitching about the Rockies. Nothing's going to happen. But for crying out loud, this fan base is dying for anything to grab a hold of. And you're giving them coach speak. Here's what's fun. Hold on. Okay? This guy right here, this guy is not walking through the door. This guy is not going to walk through the door and start running the ball for you. And you don't have this guy anywhere near this roster. Hell, you don't even have her. You got nothing. Nothing. Can you just be honest and say, you know what? We probably should have found a way to get Beatty the ball more. Because for you to say, we had some plays drawn up for him, but we didn't get to the red zone to use them. I don't give a crap. The dude was running the ball effectively, and you didn't give it to him. What kind of an ass clown does that?
It's worth noting, too, that, by the way, Tyler Beatty had 1 run. So I'm gonna go in a different direction from Nate, too.
You want me to get you some props?
No, I'm fine, but it's very simple.
How about this one? Hold on. How about these? Can we have these? Because this is what I need today after your crap.
Nate's holding up a couple of brews there. And this is part of it, too, because, Nate, I look at it and I get it. The coach speak is frustrating. But here's the other part. I don't believe it. I don't believe it for a second. I don't believe that Tyler Beatty had 1 run for 16 yards. That Sean Payton went, oh, that's all right. We expected that. In fact, I secretly planned a whole bunch of plays for Tyler Beatty in this game that were only going to come up in the red zone or situational things that never happened to come up again. Look, quite simply, that is incredible in the literal sense of the term. It is not credible. It's not believable. If you actually had a game plan for Tyler Beatty, right? Sean Payton kind of comes from that John Gruden school. I'm there, 300 hours a week. I don't even know the math. And I sleep in a cot. He's from that thing that, like, the coaching job is so complicated, nobody can ever understand it except for us coaches. He's from that school. But every single one of the 78,000 people in that stadium, about 50,000, who apparently were rooting for the Broncos, can see the fact that if Tyler Beatty was part of the game plan, you would have used him because he was the only guy that was effective. And we're saying that even on one carry, because Jaleel McLaughlin had 7 yards on one carry. The other 2 yards, he had -1. Javonte Williams' longest carry was 5 yards. Okay? Beatty had almost what those two guys had in one play, and you're telling me that a coach would look at it and say, wow, that was a really good run, and I have bigger plans for him today, but I'm definitely not going to use him. If that came out of Mike Tomlin's mouth, would you believe it? If it came out of Kyle Shanahan's mouth, would you believe it? If it came out of Nick Sirianni's mouth or John Harbaugh, would you believe it? Of course you wouldn't believe it. If it came out of Andy Reid's mouth, would you believe it? No, because Andy Reid would adjust and adapt. This is the complaint that I've had with Sean Payton, and it's the reason that I recommended against him being hired right here. Because Sean Payton, and I've consistently said this to you, he runs things like a college coach, which is the idea that I run this offense and everybody must just fit into it, whether they're good fits or not. In the pro game, you can't do that. You are subject to the draft. You are subject to free agency. You are subject to the salary cap. You have to adjust your offense based on the players you have, not the players you want. Nate gave props on other players. Drew Brees isn't walking through that door. Alvin Kamara is not walking through the door. Jimmy Graham's not walking through the door. Michael Thomas isn't walking through the door. Certainly not that line all those years isn't walk through the door. You don't have that. So it's on Sean Payton, not the players, to adjust his offense to fit them. Every other pro coach in the NFL does this that is successful. Sean Payton has been successful. Sean Payton has not been successful as the coach of the Broncos, in part because he hasn't actually adjusted to the Denver Broncos yet, expecting the Broncos to adjust to him. But that's not how the pros work. And it's one of the reasons, I think, that when Sean Payton was trying to get back into the NFL, Nate, no other team wanted him. He didn't want the Broncos. He wanted the Cowboys. He thought Mike McCarthy would get the axe. McCarthy didn't, because Jerry Jones, with all his myriad flaws, actually is pretty loyal to his coaches, even when they're not doing well. So he gets the Broncos to pay up to roughly $20 million a year. It's a bit of a mystery, but roughly that. And it basically now puts the team in a giant salary cap hole, a dead cap money everywhere, rookie quarterback that he's basically attached to at the hip now. And it's hard to wriggle off of it. Now, like I pointed out and started the show, 19 games, 3 different quarterbacks. Someone tell me the difference. It's the same thing. And to say, oh, sorry, folks, we actually had a big plan for Tyler Beatty coming in this week, who, by the way, even by the quote there, the long-winded needs an editor quote from Payton indicates that, Beatty wasn't even part of the plan until Audric Estime got hurt. Come on.
Here's my favorite.
Who buys that?
Here's my favorite part before we jump away from this and we can talk about it again. Here's my favorite part of the quote from Sean Payton. And it's the fact that it was a jumbled mess. It was the fact that it was the utmost verbal vomit that came out of his mouth. And you want to know the worst part of that? He had to have known for the last 18 hours that he was going to get asked that question, and he still didn't have a coherent answer for it. That shows you how screwed up it is. That quote that I shared, that I gave you word for word, and I wanted to read it to you because I wanted you to hear how stupid it sounded verbally, and to recognize that since 5:30 yesterday evening, he has known he was going to be asked that question. And he still didn't have a coherent answer as to what the hell is wrong with his running game. That, to me, shows that he can't figure out how to get out of his own way. Period.
That's obviously a concern. In the last 5 seasons, only 2 of 41 teams that have started 0-2 have made the playoffs. That's just a hair under 5%.
No, please.
The Broncos were never going to make it anyway.
No.
And this is not us taking a victory lap, but we tried to tell you this team's not even going to win 6.
They're not
and
there.
The playoffs were never there. And it was always that way. Even if Sean Payton had been doing a better job coaching, which he is not. The Broncos will take on the Buccaneers, a team that is getting good coaching, and it looks pretty good. As a matter of fact, next Sunday, they'll do it on the road. We'll talk a little bit more about Bo Nix. Obviously, the season for the Broncos, you and I have talked about it, Nate. We didn't expect the playoffs. We didn't even expect 6 wins. We talked about improvement from Bo Nix. Well, did we get it? We'll take a closer look in a moment. But maybe you need to blow off a little steam after this weekend. Maybe, a good old workout does that for you. And if you're looking for the perfect place to work, play, exercise, and socialize, well, we've got the spot. Of course, you've heard of the Denver Athletic Club, right in the heart of downtown Denver. And as a DAC member, you'll enjoy top-notch amenities like the full fitness center that you expect. But there's also a licensed childcare center. There's a spa, massage, Pilates, a golf simulator, more. All of these, by the way, sound really good on a Monday after the lunch on that football game. But what truly sets the DAC apart is that vibrant member-owned community. It's all about you, offering year-round social events, co-working, dining, fun for the entire family. The Denver Athletic Club is truly a club for your whole life. So join the DAC today. Visit denverathleticlub.cc for all of the details. Nate,
here's what I'm trying to do for you folks. All right. I'm sorry. Sandy's not here. Okay. And so somebody needs to yell. And y'all know, if you've followed the 15 seasons now that I've covered this team in this town, you know that I like to yell and I need to get it out of my system. Okay. I just need to get it out of my system. And so I apologize if me being fired up is making your Monday even more of a challenge. But son of a bitch, I'm pissed.
Speaking of,
I am annoyed as hell.
Literally incredible. You're not mad.
I am.
You're not apologizing.
So what I'm doing,
you're not apologizing.
What I'm going to do, I'm going to do my best to have 10% of the frustration that I know Sandy would have if he were sitting here right now.
Yeah, might have been we might have had the whole.
Sandy might have. Yeah, it would have been it would have been ugly. It would have been really, 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 really ugly. And you talked about it, by the way, and I was obviously there at the game.
Mm-hmm.
Steelers fans are obnoxious. A lot of opposing fans are obnoxious, and I knew that there were going to be a lot of Pittsburgh fans there, and frankly, a ton of them were really good. The only statement I'm going to make for Pittsburgh fans, you beat a rookie quarterback by 7 points, and your offense looked pretty damn inept too. So I'm sure you're happy that you got the road win, but holy cow, Pittsburgh, y'all are in trouble. You guys are in trouble. You might have TJ Watt, but you're in trouble, man. If you couldn't do much of anything in terms of against this team, this might finally be the year that Tomlin breaks his streak of above 500. This might be it.
Well,
this might be it, man.
Starting 2-0 is a pretty good way to avoid it. They're the only 2-0 team in the North, with both the Ravens, who lost to the Raiders, and the Bengals 0-2. But yeah, obviously the offense is not explosive, and the talk in Pittsburgh, even though Justin Fields was pretty good, wasn't the idea that Fields is going to lock the position down. It still feels as if Wilson is going to get his crack when he's healthy, because of the potential of a little more explosiveness. Yeah, we'll see. But again, it's one of those situations where, you don't have Russell Wilson to kick around anymore. Bo Nix in this game, 20 for 35, 246 yards, no touchdowns, 2 picks, 2 sacks, a quarterback rating of 32.1. Now, you want the bright side. It's that from game 1 to game 2. No, there are a couple. There's a couple.
Okay.
There's a couple.
You try to convince me of that, Sean.
Well,
Go right ahead.
I can convince you, but I definitely want to lay out all the facts. The yardage obviously jumped from game 1 to game 2. More importantly, the yardage per attempt took a big jump forward, more than doubled to 7 yards per attempt. That's maybe the most telling stat in modern passing offenses. And his passer rating went up. Now, it went up to 55.2 for comparison, because it's based mostly on completions and touchdowns. Justin Fields was 97.3, despite for only throwing 117 yards. That's why passer rating seems to be on the way out, and QBR quarterback rating seems to be a little more ascendant when you're talking about modern analytics. But the drawbacks are significant too. Completion percentage went down. QBR, the more effective overall rating, also went down on the year now. Nix is under 50% completion. He's at, he's over 50% completion at 59.7. He's 192 yards per game passing, no touchdowns, 4 picks, 4 sacks, 51.0 passer rating this season. And more importantly, he leads the Broncos with 60 yards rushing. Is there anything from Nix that you saw, Nate, that made you feel he was better in week 2 than week 1? And I'll give you one. And it's a big one. The timing, at least when targeting his receivers, was better. He wasn't consistently throwing behind guys, which does tell me that the speed of the game is something he has adjusted to from week 1 to week 2, and I do expect that to get better. I'm going to start with that positive and leave it to you.
I'm going to say this. I believe the number one thing about Bo Nix is he just needs to continue to play and play and play and play and play. Mm-hmm. Throw him to the wolves.
Yeah, people are already going to social media and saying, like, forget it, start Stidham. No. There's no, maybe you'd even be winning. And you know what? You might even maybe won one or both these games with Zach Wilson. And I'm not joking. But what's the point? You got to play the guy that's going to give you the future one way or the other.
Here's a good example, folks. In the last 30 minutes, Bryce Young has been benched by the Panthers.
Why?
Okay.
That's just dumb.
Bryce Young has been benched by the Panthers in favor of Andy Dalton. That's happened in the last 30 minutes. Okay. It happened right before we went on the air. And here's the thing. I could even say this in terms of defending the Panthers with their decision, just with this particular part. And that is, they've seen him now for an entire season, plus the first 2 weeks here. Maybe they've decided, okay, we want to sit him down for just a minute. We need to get this guy to clear his head a little bit. We need to get him right, and then we can put him back out there. Okay. The equivalent of taking, Jackson Holiday and dropping him back down to the minors and then bringing him back up. Okay. He was looking awful when he first came up for the O's. All right. Maybe that's one of the things they think they can do with Bryce Young. I think there's a lot more problems than that when it comes to Carolina, and it's not just Bryce Young. But they've at least seen him for an entire season. Broncos fans, the answer is not to bench Bo Nix. It is not the answer. You're going to continue to put him out there because you invested the pick that you did. It was the smart thing to do on this organization's shoulders. I will still tell you that I still believe Bo Nix looks the best of the rookie quarterbacks we have seen this season so far. There's another positive for you.
There's not a single rookie quarterback, Nate, that's thrown a touchdown yet. Not one.
I'm okay with it.
Just saying, there hasn't been one.
But the number one thing you need to be able to see is for him to continue to learn. And that is what you need. And that is why the point that Sean made just a second ago was so valuable. The fact that he's not throwing behind the guys, which means he's picking up the speed. Okay. You're seeing little steps being taken forward. My issue, as I sit here on Monday morning or Monday afternoon now, the anger's been there for a while. My issue right now is that the one guy that should have had the biggest adjustment, the single biggest adjustment from week 1 to week 2 was not Bo Nix. It was Sean Payton, and he didn't show it to us. That's my issue, and I'm going to keep harping on it until he gets it right.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of the equation. It really is. And that's something that I think that Payton, and here's the thing, Nate, he's not going to change who he is. Who he is a guy that's like, this is my offense. We just run it no matter what. It's worked for me in the past, so I'm going to do it. And this is a little early to say it this season, but maybe not in the career. You go and look at Tom Landry. You go ahead and look at Bill Walsh. You look at Bill Parcells. You look at Don Shula, coaches that changed the landscape of football. And quite frankly, those are better coaches than Sean Payton. Though Sean Payton's one of the few guys that's ever won a Super Bowl. But every single one of those guys, even though some of their offenses like Walsh's and Landry's disseminated and became still part of the DNA, every single one of those guys, Bill Belichick's part of it too, got run off out of their jobs because eventually it stopped working. And what they did and what they've always done stopped working. To a certain extent, it even happened to Mike Shanahan, even though the Shanahan offense is really what's still at the core of most offenses that are effective around the league. But it happens to coaches. And this is the other thing that I got talking to people last night after the game on social media. People getting back to me. It was Drew Brees all along, huh? Yes. And you know what? No disrespect to those coaches I talked about, but it was Roger Staubach all along. It was Joe Montana and Steve Young all along. It was Tom Brady all along. When you have coach and quarterback pairings that are great, one of those guys is on the field and the other one is not. Even with Mike Shanahan and John Elway. Go look at Mike Shanahan's career post John Elway and with John Elway. It's always the player. And the Broncos don't have Drew Brees, but Sean Payton is still calling the same offense. That's on him, but he's not going to stop now. And this is something that the Broncos are going to have to deal with. How many weeks, including last year, to hear Sean Payton talk about the running game? We've got to involve them more. We've got to involve them more. Throw a tail end of, and I've got to be better too at the end of a post-game loss. And everyone's stunned that nothing changes the next week. This is who he is. And he's not going to change. The Broncos knew what they were getting when they hired him. And if they didn't, that's on them. He's got his quarterback.
I'm trying, folks. I'm trying really hard. See the smile?
He's got his quarterback. I think there's progress.
I'm trying.
But here's the problem. Unless Bo Nix becomes Drew Brees,
I'm trying.
Nate, I don't think he's ever going to become Drew Brees.
Here's the thing. I want to pop this comment up from Monday Serious on YouTube. Thank you for watching. We appreciate this. He said, is this just a throwaway season for the Broncos? Yeah, we've been telling you that.
No.
We've been telling you that.
It's not.
If your judgment is based on wins, then yes.
Yes. If it's playoff, if it's one of those people that you only work on the rings. Like if you didn't win a ring, if you didn't win a chip, the season was a waste of time. If you're one of those folks, I guess the season was a waste. Also, Don't be one of those folks because being a sports fan is probably not for you.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
But there are things you look for, and as we've talked about, it's the growth in Nix. It's the growth in Jonathan Cooper. It's the growth in Riley Moss. It's the improvement of Quinn Miners. These are the things that will make your team better down the road. But otherwise, it's a throwaway season. It's what we've been telling you the whole time. The Broncos are not going to make the playoffs. They are likely to have a top 10 and maybe even top 5 pick. We're 2 weeks in. There are only 2 teams that are worse.
Go get me Travis Hunter.
A lot of it. And that would be.
Bring me Travis Hunter.
Oh, don't even get me started.
Bring me Travis Hunter.
Get to that soon enough. You can't play quarterback, but whatever.
Who cares?
He can apparently do everything else. But
bring me
with
Travis
the exception
Hunter.
of the Giants and the Panthers, who just benched their quarterback, this is the worst team in the league. And Nate, surprise, surprise. What is the odds in Vegas? What were the 2 worst teams than the Denver Broncos? The Giants and the Panthers. They don't build billion-dollar casinos in Vegas by accident, folks.
Yep. The Pats were right there. It was the Patriots, the Panthers, the Giants. So that's exactly what was expected. I'll tell you what, Troy Renk's hanging out in the green room. Let's get a break. Let's bring him in because I know he is just as frustrated with what he's seeing, and he was a part of that presser. So 60 seconds and we're back. This is Mile High Sports Today.
BYB Bare Knuckle returns to Denver, Colorado, Saturday, September 21st for the long-awaited rematch of the 2023 Bare Knuckle Boxing Hall of Fame Fight of the Year in one of the greatest bare knuckle battles to ever take place in the Trigon. As former BYB lightweight champion, Mark the Shark Irwin looks to regain his title against the man who took it from him, Julio Tenori. Plus, BYB women's lightweight champion Patty Juarez looks to become BYB's first 2-division women's champion when she faces Courtney Cameron for the BYB super lightweight title. Don't miss these great matchups and much more. Visit BYBExtreme.com for tickets and information.
That's going to be a lot of fun, by the way, folks. It's coming up this Saturday, the BYB, the Stockyard Brawl that is going to be taking place right here in Denver as BYB comes back. Go check it out. BYBExtreme.com is where you can snag the tickets. Going to be a really fun event. And I know some of you would like to be able to take a few swings like that inside a fight ring after watching what we watched yesterday. I don't know what kind of a right hook Troy Renck might have, but let's bring our buddy in. Troy Renck from the Denver Post, the host of the Broncos podcast with Troy Renck as well. Troy, whether you got a chance to see it off the top of the program or not, I know you were participating in the presser. I took to task Sean Payton at the beginning of the program for his long rambling answer about the in-game running back rotation. And aside from the fact that I thought that he didn't answer anything of substance, I thought it showed his inability to be able to make some changes on the fly during the game. But most importantly, and I want to know your impression because you participate in these pressers a lot more than Sean and I do. But Troy, one of the things that annoyed me about his answer was that he had to have known for the last 18 hours that he was going to be asked that question about his running backs and about the struggles they've had in the running game. And he still didn't seem to have an answer for what is going wrong and what he's going to do about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things on Monday where the coach reviews it and then talks to the staff, and then they don't really introduce it kind of to the team until Wednesday. So that's part of it, Nate, is not him not wanting to reveal that, yes, they're going to make some personnel changes. We all love Javonte Williams. Tyler Beatty had 1 carry for 16 yards yesterday. Javonte had 11 for 17 yards. Javonte now in his last 12 games dating to last season is averaging 3.1 yards per carry. You can't be the starting running back with that number. And again, you can like Javonte. He's a great guy. He just is not producing like a starter. For me, I would start Beatty. I would mix in McLaughlin and then just see where, Javonte fits here and there on some certain plays, and maybe even on third down, you use him like you were going to use P. Ryan perhaps. But he made it sound like, Jalil's got to get more touches. And I'm just like, that's not the answer to the run game, because the problem, they need to be able to run between the tackles. McLaughlin's not that runner. I would give Tyler Beatty, as they say in basketball, give him some run, see what it looks like. You got to challenge the offensive line. I would say this, Nate, Peyton was right in one sense. It's not one thing. That's the problem with this. The offensive line, 4 guys look right, 5th guy blows an assignment. Then they block it right. Running back has bad vision, doesn't cut it back. Those are things that are frustrating, but I'd definitely get Tyler Beatty more involved.
Do you believe for a second, however, I mean, you're talking about going to the 4th string, or at least originally thought about as the 4th string back, a practice squad guy, and then immediately installing him as a starter. Quite frankly, I see the logic behind what you're saying, Troy, but I don't even believe for a second that when Sean Payton basically hints that, we had plenty of plays ready to go for Tyler Beatty, and he was going to be a big part of our offense, but it just didn't happen to come up. I don't buy it. Do you?
Well, on the surface, no. I did have a long conversation, or as part of a long conversation with my colleague Parker Gabriel with Adam Troutman after the game, because he knows Peyton better than anyone in there in terms of playing with them when they didn't have Drew Brees. And we were asking him, what is going on with these 3 and outs and why the offense essentially stinks? And he did indicate that part of our issue are these 3 and outs where we're not on the field long enough to kind of even figure out what the defense is doing. And I talk about this in my podcast. So what happens is every drive, it's like you're calling plays in a vacuum. And Sean, you can appreciate this. It's like when you're pitching and you're sequencing and you're setting hitters up. That, okay, I'm going to throw my curveball the first time through the lineup, and I'm setting it up so my next time through on an 0-2, 1-2 count, I'm going to throw a changeup. Well, they're not able to ever sequence because they're never on the field. 3 and out, 3 and out. So every drive becomes like the first drive of the game. That's a problem. But that said, it's hard to believe because we heard the same thing about Mims last year. We've heard it about other players. We had all these plays for him. We just didn't get to him. Well, you don't get to him because you're terrible. And you're terrible because some of these guys need to get their plays earlier. It's just like, again, you have a same guy shoot who's a terrible shooter. And then with time the game is, we're down 20, then so-and-so gets in with 48 seconds left and makes a 3. And we're like, why didn't that guy play sooner? Well, we couldn't get to him. Well, move him in front. Cut him in the line. And to your point, yeah, Beatty's a 4th-stringer. I get it. But if you watched him in camp, he didn't play like one. And Estime, this would have been the time for Estime, unfortunately. I'm still shocked they put him on the IR. There's no way that was a 4-week injury for me, but it just tells you they didn't think he was ready. And I'm not saying he's not hurt. I'm just saying they made a quick decision to throw him on the IR. Tells me that he wasn't ready. I just got to try something else. And with Javonte, it's not even based on these last 2 games. It's the last 12 games. He just isn't the same guy. But Peyton, it reminds me of baseball when the manager keeps saying, well, you got to tip your cap to their pitcher. You got to tip your cap. Well, if you're the one always tipping the cap, it's you. You suck. You are the one that's bad. You have to make the adjustment. When you're reactionary to everything, you're terrible. At some point, you've got to say, We're going to simplify the verbiage. We're going to simplify these personnel groups. Whoever's making plays is going to get the most touches, and we're going to see what that looks like. Because Todd Bowles is going to get after him. He is going to heat it up. And if you think you're going to do the same old thing with Bo Nix getting the line of scrimmage with under 10 seconds, just trying to get the snap off against Todd Bowles, you think it's bad now? It's going to be 32-3 with 7 sacks bad if they're not careful this week.
Well, Troy, let's go back to the issue with Beatty, for example. And the point you made, I think, with basketball was really good. Sean Payton has won a Super Bowl. He's won more than 100 plus career games. He's 20th in the NFL history in winning regular season games. I mean, are you telling me that Sean Payton is either unwilling or incapable of making these changes on the fly, that it requires an entire week of planning for him to say, wow, this guy just doesn't have his fastball today, I got to go with somebody else?
Well, part of yes, I am. And there's some nuance to this answer. Peyton alluded to this today in his morning presser. He's the play caller, and he said this about Beatty. He's got to recognize that with his eyes. He needs somebody upstairs, whether it's Pete Carmichael or Joe Lombardi, to get so-and-so in the game. We need him in the game. He's getting separation. He's getting open. Because as the play caller, his head's in that waffle-sized menu looking it over. You're just trying to get the plays out and keep the operation running smoothly. So sometimes it's not like, oh, who was that run? Like you're literally on to the next play. That's where you need that voice inside your head, whether it's Lombardi or Carmichael, to say, hey, Beatty looks good. He's got burst. Get him in. Switch it. We're switching him. Just tell him we're switching the plays we had marked for Javonte. Give those to Beatty for the next couple series. For me, it just he needs someone more assertive upstairs at times to tell him, because they're all his guys. And at times when you watch this play out, it just feels like they're all kind of yes man for him. They're all agreeing with him, which again, when they had Breeze, it worked. It's not working now. He could use the assist with somebody kind of being the truth serum upstairs, being like, hey, so-and-so's not running the routes. He's not getting set. Get him out. Get somebody else. But don't even suggest it. They need the power to just say, we're going to this guy.
You know what it reminds me of, Troy?
Dream job, right?
No,
there.
You know what it reminds me of, Troy? When we kept saying that we needed somebody to stand behind Nathaniel Hackett and tell him when to call timeouts.
Well, he needed someone in the booth to tell him how to call plays. Like his was more remedial. But to your point, yes.
Like you need somebody that goes, oh, here's what we're doing for clock management. Here's when we're going to challenge this play call or this penalty that was called, or this particular catch, no catch, whatever. Like they just need that person that just goes, nope. It's the equivalent of the guy who's in charge of pulling Dion back off the field and back onto the sideline, like his little wrangler, that drives me nuts. All right, Troy, let me transition away from the offense here for just a second. The other thing that seemed to be commented on a lot yesterday during and after the game, folks felt that Pat Surtain was very inconsistent in his play yesterday. What did you see out of the new multi-million-dollar man on defense?
I mean, he had a bad game. I mean, it's going to happen with cornerbacks. He got caught at times. He was playing zone, so he's playing off, a deeper, it was like 8-10 yards off. It seemed like he got out of rhythm that way instead of being, more where he's up on the receiver. And Pickens is really good. I mean, I'm not saying he's top 10 receiver, but he's certainly in terms of just pure talent, he's that dude. He's that guy. He had a bad game, and he got frustrated. That's one of the few times I've seen Pat get frustrated. He had what he thought was a bad call. Then one bad call became a second, and then he had a call on special teams. I didn't even know he played special teams. We didn't get an answer on that today. Maybe Wednesday we'll find out. I don't even know why he was out there on special teams. But it just felt like he got into his own head a little bit, which we've never really seen. He was frustrated he feels like he's getting pushed off, and then he's getting called for push off, and that created kind of it's like you get caught in between. I want to be really aggressive, but I don't want to get penalized, and then by not being aggressive, you end up having to make up space that you're not used to, and then you run into the guy. And so basically, he had a bad game, and they still could have won even with him having a bad game. I still 90% of it on the offense, but I would think without looking at all the film, that was probably his worst game as a Bronco. And even then, the yardage wasn't much other than the one big pass on the penalty. But I just tell people it happens at corner. I mean, I watched Champ Bailey have a bad game right now. Watch Chris Harris have a bad game. I mean, when you play that position long enough, you're going to have a bad game. It just sticks out with them because they have no margin for error. That's what all this is about. When you can't score points, every mistake is amplified, whether it's Bo Nix's pick in the red zone or Pat Surtain's interference call. Everything becomes magnified because they don't score points.
Yeah, and it was just a couple plays here and there, but you do look at it and go, boy, maybe a little less fatigued by taking him off the field and not making a blocker on a punt might be an option. Again, sort of an odd thing in a series of odd things yesterday. You wrote about it in the Denver Post, Troy. The idea that the Broncos on the chance to have an onside kick after Will Lutz kicks the 29-yarder. It's 1:56 left. Denver has one timeout. It's still a touchdown game. Obviously, that's an onside kick option. And we know the onside kick odds are terrible. It's like 2.6% of getting it. And your odds are very little. At the same time, at best, even if the Broncos defense held up, they might have gotten the ball back with 20 seconds to go and no timeouts. Instead, they got it back with 9 at their own 19. So even if it's a 2.6%, that was a better chance than having to go 81 yards in 9 seconds. This is the kind of stuff that high school coaches get right. How did Sean Payton get it wrong?
Sorry, that's Bentley the Bulldog. Not happy about your
Welcome
question.
to the show, Bentley.
Hey, Bentley's upset too. It's okay. I'd be upset too.
Yeah, I think he had the same reaction in real time. He's a gambler, that Bulldog. He's a gambler. He had the over.
Oh, I hope not. I hope not. There was no reason to play the over. To play the over in that one.
There's going to be a couple milk
every
bones
time someone asks me about betting on the Broncos or fantasy, I'm like, there's only one thing you'd ever do with the Broncos: take the under.
Yeah, well, you talk about that on sides, but worth noting too, you pointed that out. Under Russell Wilson, the Broncos averaged 21.7 points a game. In the 4 games without him, they've averaged 14.
Yeah, that's Nate Hackett territory. That's Hackett. That's what got Hackett fired. Where there were times watching Hackett, we joke it was easier to pass a kidney stone than pass a football in Hackett's offense. And their now points per game is very similar to what they were doing under Hackett. Here's the issue with Payton and that onside kick that was so bizarre. One, he should have run a play before the 2-minute warning because they only had one timeout. So it cost them a timeout not to use the 2-minute warning. You kick the field goal, it's 1:56 left, and it's 13-6. And I get it, just like you laid it out, Sean. The onside kick odds are terrible. But when he explained it afterward, he's like, we thought we were going to get it back. One of their run plays took more, but we were going to get it back with 25 seconds and have a chance to run 2 or 3 plays. Okay. What about the offense you were watching on this day makes you think you're going to be able to basically go 75 yards in 25 seconds? That's my issue is, so if you do the onside kick and it fails, who cares? Because the only way you were going to score a touchdown for me is if you got the ball at midfield or thereabouts. There's no way that offense we were watching yesterday is going to put some crazy 4-play 80-yard drive together. They're just not. They were completely inept. So it made no sense. And then in the first half, Payton got baited into going on a 4th and 7. Lutz wanted to kick the field goal with 2:37 left in the half. Payton's like, no. In my mind, we're the field position game. That's what this week's about. I don't like it. I don't like a 57-yarder. We're going to play the field position game. Go to half, 7-0 down. Then Tomlin calls timeout after the Broncos run the punt team out. And it's like he baited him into it. And then Payton's like, we're going to go for it now. Well, at that point, again, your offense is doing nothing. And it's a 4th and 7. And Bo Nix has terrible footwork, throws it into a defender's arm. And, oh, yeah, it was to Troy Franklin, who was about 5 yards short of the stick. So everything about the play stunk. You would have been better off just kicking the 57-yard field goal. Those are the decisions I'm not understanding by Payton. He's way too smart to not make better decisions. And it reminds me, and I say this in my podcast, the year I covered Jim Leland with the Rockies in '99. Jim Leland is a Hall of Fame manager. He's the smartest manager I've ever covered. And the year he was with the Rockies, he was terrible because he couldn't get his arms around this terrible pitching staff that was historically bad, not by Rocky standards, by any standards. And he never could get into a rhythm of how to deal with Coors Field and manage the bullpen, which was his specialty. And at Payton, at times, I keep saying this, guys, he has to coach the team he has, not the team he wants. And I feel like he's still trying to coach like he has the 2020 Saints. He doesn't. And now he's out of rhythm and making these just oddball decisions, because this reminded me of the Patriots game last year when he should have just gone to overtime, where the kick can't beat you. And instead you get walked off because you're calling timeouts to get a ball back for an offense that just went 3 and out. Like, I'm just not – he's way too good for this.
Troy, before we let you go, let's try to see if we can put a little positive spin. Let's try to put at least like a half a swath of frosting on top of this cupcake here. Did you see improvement from Bo Nix? Drotar asked me that question earlier. Did you see improvement from week 1 to week 2? Did you see something that says, okay, I mean, I know he threw the pick obviously in the back of the end zone, but did you see some things, Troy, that let you say, okay, it's starting to come around a little bit for him? And I'm not looking for a light switch at this point. It's like being in grandma's dining room with that little dimmer switch. I don't need it to all of a sudden be bright, but show me something that gives me a little bit of light.
Yeah, that light is an oncoming train in the tunnel, Nate.
Oh, thanks, Troy. Thanks. I appreciate it.
That's just in your life. That has nothing to do with the
Thanks.
Yes, he was a little more decisive at times where he would climb the pocket. He's finding out in the pros, and you watch it with Caleb Williams. You can't throw off your back foot and sidearm throws in the NFL. The cornerback, they're just too good. He's understanding a little bit more about the timing issue, that when you're going to miss on passes, you got to miss low. You can't miss behind guys because it gets picked in the NFL. And I did see him respond in the second half at times to kind of the adversity of, protection breaks down and he's running, or he's being athletic. He's not showing. I mean, there were some ugly plays. Let's not pretend there weren't. But he doesn't seem to be, collapsing in the moment with like no chance and defeated and body language. I mean, but I am worried, Nate, that he's going to have a crisis of confidence after these first 4 games if they're not careful, if they don't start running the ball. If I had known they were going to drop him back the equivalent of 45 times a game over the first 2 games and not run the offense we saw in the preseason that looked more like Oregon, if I had known that, I would have advocated for Jarrett Stidham to start. Let him wear it in September. But what am I seeing? I'm seeing a guy who still remained confident, who's understanding you got to move forward and climb the pocket. You can't go side to side in the NFL because you end up throwing across your body. So just little things that he's starting to pick up on. But it's not going to look right until they're balanced offensively and he's facing 3rd and 2s, 3rd and 3s, because 3rd and longs are just death on young NFL quarterbacks, and red zone with the squeezed field are death on young quarterbacks. And we're seeing that with him. But the next step for me would be getting him into more manageable 3rd downs to allow him to use his athleticism. And that's where we're going to start seeing him turn the corner. Is I want to see 4 or 5 called runs for him. I mean, maybe he is their leading rusher, but he's their leading rusher now because he's running for his life. I want to see more called runs for him and somehow get him into better 3rd manageable situations. But I am liking the fact that this is not breaking him yet. And man, these first 2 games have been ugly, and he seems to have the right mindset. So that's a good sign, but they have got to get balanced, guys, or they've got no chance.
He is Troy Renck, of course, at the Denver Post, and the host of the Broncos podcast with Troy Renck. Check that out wherever you get your podcast. Happy that Troy works with us on that. It's a terrific podcast. Make sure you check out even more. Troy, always appreciate talking with you about this. It's going to be fascinating week to week to dissect what the Broncos are doing, because I think it's very obvious now to everyone involved. The playoffs are not in the cards. We'll learn little bits about this Broncos team every Sunday. Thanks a lot for breaking it down with us.
You got it, John. Nate, thank you. Appreciate you guys.
All right. Thanks so much, Troy Renck, joining us. And
let Bentley call the plays.
Well, he just goes, "Bo, bo."
Right.
Oh, so it's no different than Sean Payton.
That's okay.
Right.
I'm all right with it. I don't know. You could have like bring your pet to the game day. And we could just put a couple of them on headsets.
It's ugly, obviously, for the Broncos. We'll change directions a little bit. We'll go up to Fort Collins for this weekend and look at the Rocky Mountain Showdown in a minute.
Let's talk about
something even better.
Let's talk about that. Yeah, I actually stopped by. This is where I had dinner last night when I left the game, and that's my friends at Rolling Smoke Barbecue. Remember, the locations all over town that you can track them down. The original in the Stanley Marketplace in Aurora. You can find them at the corner of Dry Creek and University in Centennial, the Golden Mill as well, and the newest location up in Wheat Ridge. It's our friends at Rolling Smoke Barbecue. So good. Hardwood smoked, ready for you every single day. The sides are made fresh every day as well. And if you've just taken in a really deflating Broncos game like I had, they got a bar. And so when I got there, I had my barbecue, but I also had a beer because I kind of needed a little bit to be able to wind down after watching all of that. It's all there for you. The food is fantastic. The crew takes really good care of you. But I will tell you this, because I always point this out to you, and I know this sounds like it's something that would not be good to say in an advertisement, but I'm going to say it anyway. We walked in after the game, looked up at the chalkboard immediately because they're going to be out of some stuff, because by the time we got there after the game, people had been coming in, getting to-go orders, getting some catering to be able to entertain some folks while they were watching the games. And so, there were a handful of things that they were out of, but that is my point in how good and how fresh everything is that they do every single day. So it's Rolling Smoke Barbecue. You can find them online at rollingSmokeBBQ.com. And when you stop by, whether you're going to eat in or you're going to get it to go, make sure you tell them that Nate, Sean, and Mile High Sports sent you.
The Rocky Mountain Showdown wraps up for the, near future at the very least, because then these two teams won't meet again until 2029, barring some sort of scheduling change. If that is the case, the Colorado Buffaloes will be able to lord it over the Rams for a while. They win their 7th consecutive game in the series, go up to Fort Collins. And that was the first time for a while that's even been up there as well. And the Buffaloes get a slow start. I remember sharing on social media, I expected the Buffs to be behind in the first quarter. They were. CSU took a 3-0 lead. Felt like the Rams had an opportunity to take a much larger lead. They could not capitalize. And by about midway through the second quarter, it felt like the Rams had missed their window. Colorado pulls away, wins the game 28-9. Nate, maybe the best sign for the Buffaloes. For the first time since Deion Sanders took over as head coach, the Buffs had more than 100 yards on the ground, and they did that without Dallin Hayden, the Ohio State transfer that had been their best running back thus far in the season.
Yeah, but let me counter that though, right? Like, you finally got a guy that got the yardage on the ground, right?
And Micah Welch mostly, yeah.
Okay, so you finally get the guy that does 65. That. Shedeur still threw it 49 times,
including at the end of the game when they should have once again been running out the clock.
What in the world are you doing?
Should have been running out the clock.
What are you doing?
You're exposing Sanders to unnecessary hits for no reason. At that point, and this was a really good game by the Buffs. Look, 310 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks for Sanders. Wasn't sacked all that often. Travis Hunter was brilliant yet again. Yes, I'm with Nate. I'm fully on board with I don't care where the Broncos pick in the first round. Go get Travis Hunter.
Go get Travis Hunter.
But the idea of putting Sanders at risk late for throwing, and I get it. I guess they're trying to send a message. This is about Shedeur Sanders kind of wanting to send a message, which he did after the game, kind of going after Braden Fowler-Colosi. I don't care that much about that. But if Shedeur Sanders wants to avoid the concern that NFL scouts are starting to have, which is that he can be selfish and focus on personal goals over the team, that's the best way to do it. If that's the reputation you want, you have the game won. It's over. Hand the ball. Kneel. Whatever it takes. This is now a couple games in sequence when you're talking about wins in which the Buffs could have, would have, should have run the clock down, get the win, do not expose their quarterback to further hits. And they didn't do it. I don't know if that's on Shedeur Sanders, if he's audibling out of Pat Shurmur's calls. I doubt it. If Pat Shurmur's just letting Shedeur Sanders be Shedeur, I suspect it's that. And if Deion Sanders is okay with it, I suspect it's that as well too. You got the win. It was dominant. Your team looked good. It was a good all-around performance. Defense was good. Offensive line was better. Everything was what you want, except you're exposing Sanders to unnecessary hits, and it looks like you're doing it just so he can pad his stats. Whether that's the reason or not, it's a bad look. And the Buffs need to stop finishing games in which they win, where this is the conversation we have to have.
Yeah, I'm kind of over having that conversation, to be honest with you. Like I said, I can sit there and be like, oh, okay, it was a win. It was this massive crowd, 40,000 plus at Canvas Stadium.
First ever sellout.
First time CSU's ever had a sellout.
Fans showed out.
At Canvas. It's also, of the 15 games that Sanders has been head coach, it's the 13th sellout that CU has played in front of. And so, the hype in terms of fans wanting to be able to watch is real, regardless of whether it is at Folsom or it's on the road. But there's times that I'm looking at what's happening on the field, and in particular, the fact that he's still throwing the ball late in the game, and the fact that he threw it 49 times. I mean, I don't know. You're up by 19 points, right?
Yep.
Am I doing the math right?
Yeah.
You're up by 19 points. Just, I mean, I don't know. Run around in circles. Run around in circles, burn 10 seconds, and take a knee. I don't know. I don't know how much more obvious it needs to be after 2 weeks in a row of this same crap.
Yeah, the Buffs don't allow
49 times he threw the ball.
49. The Buffs don't allow a touchdown until that fourth quarter. Otherwise, they keep them to 3 points the entire game. They had it under control, a 28-3 lead. Everyone but the Atlanta Falcons are happy with that normally. And and when Marshall gets the touchdown run, the Buffs could have easily gone into a shell, could have, would have, and probably should have. If you look at the ESPN analytics, and I get it, it's not an everything situation. But when you get into that point of the game, when the Buffs had gotten in the third quarter a 21-3 lead, they had a 97.2% chance of winning. It went up to 99.7 before the fourth quarter even ended. This is the time to not let Shedeur Sanders get hit. It's the time to not let other players get hit. You've got to be smarter about this. I suspect there is some desire for the Buffs to have either Shedeur Sanders or Travis Hunter or both in the Heisman discussion. And I think that in Sanders' case, okay, but there's probably not enough there when you look at the best of the best. In Hunter's case, he's the best player in college football. I don't think he'll probably win the Heisman because I don't think the Buffs will do well enough to get him the Heisman. But he's the best player in college football. He also plays the most snaps of anybody in college football. You don't need him out there trying to catch a pass in a game that is over late in the game. Just an opportunity to get him hurt. You don't have to go back that far. You can go to last year's game against the Rams when he got hit by Henry Blackburn and had a partially lacerated liver. The Buffs have to make sure they're protecting their best players. And that means when you're protecting a lead, protect it by eating the clock, especially on a game in which you were running well. But otherwise, for the Buffaloes, I think a good performance. I think we understand that the Rams may have been a little bit overrated. Now, granted, Torrey Horton was playing hurt. He couldn't finish the game. That's a monumental loss for the Rams. But Fowler Nicolosi was not anywhere near the quarterback he was in last year's game. 209 yards, no touchdowns, 2 pick, a QBR of 6.4. Bad game for Fowler Nicolosi. And it took them too long to get Avery Morrow back into the game. Morrow looked like their best runner who was on the team last year. They keep trying to grab it out, and it just didn't spin out for Jay Norvell. But for the Buffs, it's a big win. It's made enough of a difference that they are slight favorites at home now over Baylor, which I'm a little surprised. I know that Baylor knocked off Air Force. Air Force isn't all that impressive this year either. But are the Buffaloes on to something given the fact they got a complete performance despite their injuries?
I have a hard time saying that because I'm still seeing some stupidity. And so, to me, it's like, yeah, okay, great. You're a 2-point favorite against Baylor. But
which means nothing, so have to win it.
You still got to be able to win the game. And so I recognize that essentially what the odds makers are telling you, in my opinion, is that if you were to move this to a neutral site, it'd be a coin toss game. And Baylor is not Colorado State. Baylor is not North Dakota State. Baylor is not Nebraska. And I think Nebraska is finally showing a little bit of flex in terms of, being a good football team. I'll believe it when I see them start playing their Big Ten schedule compared to what they've been doing. But I digress. I guess, have they seen something? Yes. But I think that in order to win in the Big 12 for the Buffs, it requires them to be more than a, 2-person game.
Yeah.
It requires you to be more than, you're not going to win with 2 people. I mean, hell, you can't win an NBA championship with 2. We always talk about you always have to have a 3, right? You always got to have 3 on your team. To be able to do it in an NBA championship, or at least to be able to do it consistently, is you need a big 3. It can't just be Shedeur and Travis Hunter. It can't, in part because of what Sean just said. If you keep making it about those two, you're going to get one of them hurt. And they're not going to finish the season, and it's going to feel exactly like it did last year when the wheels came off and CU just went careening off the cliff to finish off the season. So you need to build out more than that. It's why they needed to run the ball more than 19 times. Isn't that what they finished with?
Yep.
You got to be able to run the ball more than that. You need Shedeur to quit throwing it 50 freaking times a game. It's ridiculous.
It is a little bit silly. I know it's you're
if you're down by 20, so be it.
Yeah.
But you're not. Quit throwing the ball.
Yeah, it's a little too clever, and I get it. The best part of the offense, as Shedeur Sanders pointed out after the loss to Nebraska, is the passing game. But at the same time, if everyone knows you're going to pass all the time,
yes,
it starts to have diminishing returns.
And by the way, some of you CU fans that are out there, you are drinking the golden black Kool-Aid. Like, I'm watching people that I know are Buffs fans and that follow the team and all of that. Man, stop defending this ish. Because it's going to change. It's got to change, or the Big 12 is going to run them over.
Yeah, I don't care much about the post game stuff. There was talk on both sides. I don't care about that. People make that out to be a thing. Whatever.
Doug Gottlieb chiming in about it. No, Doug, stay in your lane. It's okay. Go be the college basketball guy. Just stay in your lane.
Yeah, I mean, there's some bad blood here. Fowler, Nicolosi, and Horton at their media day talked about
whatever.
About beating Colorado. It was as Shedeur Sanders put it, their Super Bowl. Would I have preferred it if Shedeur Sanders maybe didn't talk as much smack and shook his hand? Yeah, I think being a gracious winner is valuable. Does it matter in a college rivalry? No, not really. Let's stop turning molehills into mountains here. CU has other issues that are real, that are on the field that they need to address, and they'll want to address it before Baylor comes to town on Saturday. Week 2 in the NFL isn't over. We'll get to tonight's Monday Night Football game in a moment, but I want to talk about our friends here at SCO Mortgage. This Saturday, I had an opportunity to sit down with Larry from SCO Mortgage to talk about what they do. And for people who are self-employed and having trouble getting a home loan, you need to reach out to SCO Mortgage. They've helped thousands of self-employed people refinance their mortgage or buy a new house with their bank statement loan, no tax returns needed. When you're trying to get a home, when you're trying to refinance a home as a self-employed individual, it's tough. It can be really, really tricky, but they know how to make it easy. They understand the challenges. They're doing this for more than 23 years. So you need to find SCL at myspecialmortgage.com or call 303-790-2222. That's 303-790-2222, or visit them at myspecialmortgage.com and MLS number 1200716. Nate, week 2 is not quite in the books yet, because we have a battle of the birds.
Yeah, we do. We got the Eagles and the Falcons.
Which is a more dangerous bird?
An eagle or a falcon?
It's probably an eagle. They're bigger, but falcons are faster.
I don't know.
Yeah. I'm not sure.
I don't know. It's gonna.
I know the Falcons have to be a lot better than they did last week.
Now I got to think
to beat the Eagles.
Eagle,
but it depends. Are you a speed guy or a power guy?
I'm in the NFL. Power.
Okay, then Eagles.
I'll take the power.
And actually,
now the Eagles will be without AJ Brown. We're obviously already aware of that. That decision has been made. He will be out for this game this evening. There's obviously additional weapons that exist there for the Eagles going into this evening's game. They also will be at home, which is, always valuable, especially in the NFL, but in particular, I think for Philadelphia. So in this particular contest, Philly is favored by 5.5. The over-under is set at 45.5. That total, by the way, has been coming down. I believe some of that, including with the spread, is based on the AJ Brown news. The spread was at about 6.5. The total was closer to 47 or 48 at a lot of the books. And like I said, it's now come down to where it is sitting at 45.5 and the spread is at 5.5. There's some things to be able to note. I believe I might get this number wrong, so hang tight with me, folks. But Jalen Hurts at home in prime time is like 8-1 against the spread. So just something to throw out there if you're thinking about it. He still has weapons. I understand why this line might have moved a little bit when it comes to the AJ Brown news, but I'm not buying that it's going to make that big of a difference. I got to be honest with you. So I think you can still be able to go with the Eagles. I lean a little bit to the over because it has come down off of that magic number of 47. So I do lean a little bit to the over. I think that these teams can score. Atlanta obviously made a lot of investment in their defense, and I think they will give Jalen Hurts a little bit of trouble, but I think the fact that it's come down to 45.5, I would lean just slightly to the over. You got any preferences before we get into some player props?
I like the Eagles. The Eagles at the -5.5. I think their defense is enough to make a difference there. I was concerned about what we saw in Atlanta in their week 1 performance. I mean, I think they'll be a lot better than that. I think that takes some rhythm. I still like a lot of Atlanta's talent. I like them as a dark horse team to make the playoffs, but I think Philly, even without A.J. Brown, is a bit too much. And that's one of the reasons I think when you look at the receiving yards, we know it's going to be an opportunity here for Devonta Smith to move up. I like finding a little bit of plus money where you can. I know 80 yards receiving is kind of a big number, but he's going to be by far the primary target among wide receivers. Over at DraftKings, they have a +120, so slightly better than even money for Devonta Smith to get 80 receiving yards. I do like that one as one of the things that I'm going to look at tonight.
I think you can look at those. There's also some props you can get out there. BetMGM has them, so does DraftKings, in terms of the race to fill in the blank yards, right? So it's like the first receiver to get to 20, the first receiver to get to 40, et cetera. And you can get some value with Devonta Smith in that one as well. Let me go to the running situation here. Let's talk about Bijan Robinson, who is the bell cow for Atlanta. I think that if you go and watch week 1, and hopefully this improves, because I'd like to see it improve. I'd like to see this be something that Atlanta can benefit from. But it looks to me like Kirk Cousins is really having a hard time planting off of that foot when he throws the ball. And I credit others that can break down the film a lot better than I can for that, but I've seen a lot of people who I trust breaking down the film and saying it just looks like he can't really plant that foot.
Well,
which means
as a guy who's had the Achilles injury,
it's not fun.
It's hard.
It's not fun at all. But I think that means you lean on Bijan Robinson. But here's what I like is you can get standard player prop juice. So standard juice when it comes to lines and totals is -110, but standard juice on player props is usually up at -115. So if you're going back and forth between those two, just understand when I say that a standard juice on a player prop, it is normally -115 as opposed to -110. I like him to go over 15.5 for his longest rush attempt. If you go back to the first game of the year, yes, I know it was in Sao Paulo on an absolutely horrendous field. However, Josh Jacobs went over this number twice for the Packers, and Emmanuel Wilson went over it once. So the Eagles defense allowed 3 times for a running back to get over 15.5 on a single carry. And so I think Bijan Robinson can do that. I think 15.5 is too low. If this maneuvers either from the time that you're watching the show or listening to it, if you're listening on demand, to the game, I like this up to, call it 16.5, maybe even 17.5. Then I'm going to stay away. But I think there's great value here at 15.5 on Bijan Robinson. Now, the boosts have been out there like crazy, folks, when it comes to anytime touchdown scores. I think Caesars has one for today that's like a 50% boost. DraftKings has been giving you a no sweat option, which I'm going to address here in just a second, where you make a bet. So let's say you make a $25 bet on one of these guys to score a touchdown. If they don't, you get your $25 back as a bonus bet. That's one of the things that DraftKings has been doing every day of NFL here so far through the first 2 weeks. So if you look at the Monday night touchdown plays, here are my 4 favorites that I've got out there for you to consider. The first is looking at both of the tight ends in this particular contest, Dallas Goedert and Kyle Pitts. I could easily see either one of them splashing 6. My favorite, to be honest with you, is Kyle Pitts over the 2 of these. But I do think you've got a really good option. And remember, without A.J. Brown, if you see the Eagles get down towards the red zone, I do believe it'll be that third name that you see on the screen, which is Saquon Barkley. But I also think without A.J. Brown there, you could see Dallas Goedert be a red zone target for Jalen Hurts, especially at home. Now, I talked to you about the idea of the no sweat or some of these different bonuses, things like that are out there from the books. I'm of the belief you don't have to play it this way, folks. But when I have no sweat opportunities, especially for touchdown scorers, my MO is to go with somebody that isn't in like the lower, 4 or 5 guys in terms of the odds payout. Even though your chances of hitting are obviously higher for those guys, that's why their odds are at the minus numbers. I'm somebody that says, if you're going to give me the no sweat, let me take a shot on something that has some higher plus odds. So for the Eagles defense special teams to score as of program time right now is plus 425 over at DraftKings. That is where I am using my no sweat for tonight. Because could I see Kirk Cousins make a mistake? Yes. And we're going to talk about that coming up here in just a second. And would it surprise me for the Eagles to be able to take one to the house? No, not at all. I think they could wind up with a pick six against Kirk Cousins. And again, it's because he's just not planting that same way off that Achilles, in my opinion. And in a lot of other people's opinions, especially I've seen people break it down and I've watched it and I'm like, oh yeah, that's exactly what's happening. So if you're looking for the no sweat option, that's why I bring up the Philly defense. Before I get to my same game parlay that I've got for tonight, Sean, from a touchdown standpoint, I know you were chanting for Saquon Barkley. Anybody else you like that you think is going to splash 6?
I do, actually. And, well, it's Jalen Hurts. I think calling his own number, I think that it becomes a little more of an option, especially with A.J. Brown out. I think with the terrific 3-touchdown game that Barkley had as in his Eagles debut, there's going to be a lot of focus on that. I think that opens the opportunity for a quarterback draw, or when they get down low, we know that Hurts tends to call his own number. I think there's a pretty good chance he is in one of those guys that's in the minor. In the ones that he's in the minus there with a minus 105, and that's not a surprise. But I like Jalen Hurts a lot in this one. I like some of the guys that you brought up as well, including the defense, which I think is a possibility. But I guess, if you really want to go long shot, even a little longer than yours, you could go with Kenneth Gainwell, who, may end up catching some dump off somewhere and get in there. But if you're looking at a guy that I think has the best chance of getting in, given all the game situations, quite frankly, I like at minus 105. I like Jalen Hurts.
All right. I can live with that one. All right. We always like to do a same game parlay here on the program, especially for Monday Night Football and for Thursday Night Football. So here it is for you. My Monday night same game parlay plus 320 on your payout here at DraftKings. Let's start with the Eagles taking care of business on the money line. Again, I like them minus 5.5, but when I do same game parlays, I usually do not do the spread unless it's like a 10.5 point spread and I'm bringing it down to, 3.5, 4.5, something like that. So in this case, I'm just going to take the Eagles on the money line. Give me Saquon Barkley to splash 6. Maybe he doesn't do the hat trick and winds up with 3 touchdowns, but I do think that he splashes 6 at least once. Bijan Robinson is a threat coming out of the backfield to catch the ball. So give me over 25 yards receiving for him in this contest, especially as Brad and I talked about this morning on the Fade 5 podcast. Hopefully you're a subscriber to that as well. If this game script goes the way we think it does and the Falcons are trailing in the second half, they may need Bijan Robinson to turn into a receiver more than a runner. And if that's the case, I think the 25 yards is easy. And then give me Kirk Cousins to throw a pick. Now, the reason I've got this built into the same game parlay, folks, is because the standard juice on this is minus 170. That is way too high for me to make the bet by itself, which means I need to find a way to pair it up with something else. And so in the case of this game tonight, the reason that I like this is because I'm taking it away from being minus 170. If you do just the top 3 options that you see there on the screen, the Eagles on the money line, the Barkley touchdown, and Bijan for 25 or more receiving yards, if you were to do that by itself, you're still getting a really good payday at a plus 225. But if you add in that pick for Kirk Cousins, you get yourself up to the plus 320. I built that one right before we went on the air, and I can tell you, I went ahead and made the bet on it earlier. It's actually up to 340 if you were to make it right now. So something you've got there that you can play with from a same game parlay standpoint, if you really like the way things are going. And then, I was throwing stuff earlier. So hold on a second, because I got to get my notepad off the floor when I was throwing the issues. I continue to bet on baseball. And part of the reason that I do that, even though I've got so much focus right now on the NFL and even on college football, part of the reason that I do that is because down the stretch here in baseball, you really start to see the haves and the have-nots. You start to see teams that are calling guys up. And in this particular case, for the first time in what feels like forever, it's in fact been, hold on, let me do the math, 17 months. Antonio Senzatella is going to be on the bump for the Rockies.
Congratulations to Senzatella coming back from that serious elbow injury. I
congratulate him. However, let's talk about the Arizona Diamondbacks here for just a second. First of all, I like the over in the game, which I think is at 10.5. I think we're going to see some scoring tonight. It continues to be nice weather here in Denver, obviously. But let me give you this here real quick. Eugenio Suarez, 375 lifetime against Senzatella. Christian Walker, 519 batting average lifetime against Senzatella. Ketel Marte, 355 lifetime average against against Antonio
Ew.
Senzatella. And if you really want to flip it around, you want to find something, Charlie Blackmon's got a 250 lifetime average against Merrill Kelly, okay? Which I know is much lower than those numbers I was giving out for Arizona, but Charlie's also been batting very well at home this season. His home and road splits are pretty dramatic, in my opinion, when you get into the deep dive of the numbers. So if you're looking for something to have some fun with tonight, what you could do is same game parlay the Rockies game against the Snakes. Bring the total down. I mean, bring it down from 10.5 to like 8.5 if you want to, maybe even 7.5. Play the over, and then look for guys like Walker, for Suarez, for Marte to each get a hit. And my bet is if you put together something like that with 4 legs, maybe you throw Charlie Blackmon in. He came into pinch hit yesterday. He didn't actually start, which screwed me out of what would have been a massive parlay, by the way. That got downgraded because his leg was voided because he didn't start. But if you put something like that together, you're going to get into plus odds at Coors Field tonight. So I would look to do something like that. It's nice as somebody that roots for the Rockies, despite everything that the Monforts do to try to completely hose all of us as fans, as somebody that roots for them, I'm glad to see Senzatella back. He has not pitched since he went 2 2/3 back in May of 2023 when they had to pull him out because of the elbow. And so you put all of that together. I'm glad to see him back on the bump. The problem is he's going up against a team that has a lot of history against him, and who knows how long or what kind of a pitch count he's going to be on. I think the Snakes get to him. And unfortunately, I think it's yet another loss for Colorado, but it's an opportunity for us to make some cash.
Yeah, and good for Senzatella, obviously. And I suspect for the Rockies, they just like him to get through a game healthy. The first one back, you're not worried about it.
I mean, I don't know. Give him 4 innings.
Yeah,
give
he said
him
he's worked
5.
on the curveball, trying to get better, and
don't press
good for him.
Don't press your luck with him. All right.
And in Senzatella's case, obviously not a superstar pitcher, but it's been a good pitcher for the Rockies over the course of his career. But also a little bit just shouting him out there because this has been a hard, obviously last May, a hard way to get back, trying to get back before September. And he admitted that he wanted to get in September, which he's managed to be able to do and get in a couple starts. But Senzatella, actually one of the best stories in Denver sports, one of the nicest people in Denver sports. Mm-hmm. So however it turns out, I really end up rooting for him. Good to see him back on the hill. Hopefully he has a half decent appearance, but the concern really is just get through it healthy, show that you can get that arm and pitch at the major league level again. So
absolutely.
Hopefully that's the case.
And
obviously,
I think you've got some good opportunities for that to be the case. So let me throw this at you, folks. If you're going to be online, because you are going to be making some bets, maybe for Monday Night Football, maybe you're looking for it for the Rockies. Danny, you got that image of the new jersey drop that we did last week. You want to pop that up on the screen for everybody, folks? Check out the Orange Crush crossover jerseys that we have hooked up with our friends at Wade and Williamson to create and make available for you here. It's a limited time opportunity. You can see we got Bo Nix's number, we've got Pat Surtain's, and we've also got, of course, the Dukes. And you can get online at wadeandwill.com, wadeandwill.com. If you're listening, just check that out. You can see it there on the screen. Jump over, open up a window, and check this out. It's a nice little crossover where you get the opportunity to take that basketball jersey like we have done in the past when we've done the sort of crossover ones that we've done for the Nuggets. In this particular case, we took that same concept of the jerseys, but we went with the Orange Crush sort of feel, that throwback style that everybody likes so much when it comes to Denver. So that full orange with the jersey numbers of obviously one of the throwbacks and 2 of the currents. We dropped those last week. It's going to be a limited opportunity. This is how we do these. It's a pre-order opportunity. We only do it for a short window, usually 7 to 10 days or so. So get online and snag one of these today while you can. wadeandwill.com.
Those are pretty cool. Plus, on top of that,
they pop. And I'll tell you what, I was
it's 80
sweating
degrees this late. Right,
my butt off.
Wish you had a tank top
in the stadium yesterday. Holy cow! I could have used something like that as the crossover. They gave out the orange towels was what they had in the cup holders waiting for all the fans.
That's good on a hot day. You're sweating.
So what I did,
that's not what they mean for
what I did, in part because my wife is much smarter than I am, much smarter than I am, and everybody in the company of Mile High Sports will agree with that statement. She said, you know what you should do? Take these, go up and get them wet. So I took them up and I got them wet at the drinking fountain, right? Got them just so, and then wore them like around my neck. Oh, That was the best advice my much better
It's like
half
you're
has
going
given in a
hiking or
long-
something.
Yeah, exactly.
And it
so
kind of felt like it.
that kind of worked because they didn't really give me a lot of reasons to wave them to be excited. And so instead, I just had the towel just hanging down. The bad part for yesterday's game, Sean, for me at the stadium. Obviously, we've already talked about the fact there were a lot of Pittsburgh fans there. Yeah. And folks, not a surprise. Okay. When Sidney Crosby, congratulations on the new contract, Sid, by the way. When Sidney Crosby comes to town, it's the same thing at the Avs games. We deal with
little aside on Sidney Crosby, by the way.
Yes.
Gets
8.7 for number 87. Right?
For all but only a handful of years in his career when he was a rookie, he has made $8.7 million. No matter what he does, you want hometown discounts. That's Sidney Crosby only takes yearly contracts at $8.7 million.
And if you don't understand that, it's because he wears number 87. It's his jersey number.
But he always makes $8.7
so anyway, congratulations. But with the fan base,
awesome.
So here was the challenge that I had yesterday. Thanks to
for all the teams in town.
Thanks to an opportunity that somebody presented to me. I was sitting behind Pittsburgh's bench. If you guys saw, I posted up on Instagram. I posted it in a couple of places. I took a picture of Russell and I just said Russell clipboard was what it said. I couldn't help it. But I was right behind.
Still works, by the way.
So the bad side of that is that's where a big chunk of the Pittsburgh fans was obviously they wanted to buy the seats that were behind the bench. And so, I had to deal.
So that's kind of on you.
I had to deal with a lot of that.
You should have expected that probably.
Yeah, but I can tell you what, from looking around the stadium, and I did a lot of looking around the stadium because what was happening on the field was
about
boring.
One every 3? 1 every 4?
I would say 1 in 4. I mean, there were 74,000 something there. They came up, there were like in the standard of the boo, there were like 1,200 no-shows or something like that. But I would say of the 75, I'm going to bring the number down just a little bit, Sean. But I would tell you there were probably 20. I would say there were probably 20,000.
This is one of those things, and that's right. It's what I kind of want to get to here is before we go is really we talked about at the beginning of the show. This is a team that will be lucky to win 6 games, and neither Nate or I have thought they will do that. We've been on record saying that all year long. Nothing's changed except for it's even more likely.
I just want to put Floyd. I just want to put Floyd up here because I'm just going to, for the rest of the program, I'm just going to remind
there have been better days.
Sean Payton to run the ball. Yeah. So here's.
Fortunately, there's no one on the roster like that.
Let me put Floyd up
still
there.
Run with other people besides Bo Nix, who is the leading rusher for.
I could put Alfred up here. Maybe Alfred would run it for us.
But you talk about the next 2 games on the road against the Buccaneers and the Jets. The Broncos are staring directly at. In fact, at this point, I'll just say it. I'll be stunned if they're not 0-4. Stunned. That'll be the correct word. They're going to be 0-4. And for the Broncos fan base, what does that mean? Because this is a rebuilding year. And I think some Broncos fans have understood that. Some Broncos fans didn't understand that until yesterday. But it still feels like after this game, Nate, that the Broncos country, if you will put it that way, really feels, and I think betrayed is the wrong word, but there's kind of this vibe that maybe we were sold a bill of goods. That this team was supposed to be better than you thought, that it was really Russell Wilson's fault. And I will say this. The Broncos, just like the Nuggets, the Avalanche, the Rockies, any professional team, their job is to sell you tickets, to get you to buy tickets, to buy merch, to tune into the broadcast so those people can advertise. Of course, the messaging from the Broncos is always going to be, we've got it, just wait and see, right? It's always that way. The Rockies do it every year as well. That's their jobs. And that's where our role is to try to help cut through that, because their job is to sell you stuff, specifically on hope. Their job is to sell you hope. So you'll put your real money down and believe that this is the time it'll turn around. I think a lot of Broncos fans, something in this game, and maybe it was the fact they were threatening to be shut out at home for the first time in history, I think broke some of Broncos country's fan base and realizes, wait, we changed the coach, we changed the quarterback, we changed the owners. Same tune, same song, over and over and over again. And that's where I really feel like this for the fan base. They were never going to make the playoffs. Wasn't going to happen. There's still things to watch for that maybe believe the Broncos are moving in the right direction. I still think they are moving in the right direction. Are they moving there at warp speed? No, they are not, obviously. But it feels to me, and you were sitting there in the crowd, that some of the fan base at this point was sort of like Jerry Seinfeld in that episode where he just gets up through the movie and like, I'm out. And for the Broncos to look at 1 out of every 4 fans in that stadium, let's say, wearing black and gold and being frustrated about that, it's on the Broncos. Win games. Be entertaining. Be compelling, and people will want to watch your games. Until then, you're the Rockies, who have been to the playoffs more frequently than you, not once, but twice since the Super Bowl. And the Rockies understand, we'll have a handful of hardcore Rockies fans, and then we hope the Cubs or the Yankees or the Red Sox or somebody else comes into town so we can darn near sell the building out. The Broncos aren't there yet, but they're somewhere where I've never seen them in my lifetime, and I was born and raised in Colorado. Worked my entire career here, and it's been difficult to do it. To maneuver around so I can stay here in my home and watch this grow. This is the worst, Nate, from the fan base side that I have ever seen for the Denver Broncos, who have never, their fan base has never endured a losing streak like this, season to season, as an NFL franchise. You have to go back to the AFL days. And it feels now that already there's a little bit of, wow, never mind, when did the Nuggets start? Think about that for the Denver Broncos. And think about what they'll be like when they're 0-4. That's what they're facing. And this is self-inflicted. Self-inflicted. Go out and win games. Go out and be compelling. You don't see that. They don't sell their tickets on the secondary market to other teams' fans. They want to go. That's the Broncos' first job. Make your fans actually want to show up to your game. That's step one.
And I think that, look, the reason I took Sean Payton to task at the open of the show, and if you missed it, go back and watch. If you want to listen to me yell.
It was fun.
If you recognize, as I said, that this is the start of the 9th season since Super Bowl 50. So the 9th season without Manning, without that defense, all that kind of stuff, right? It's the 9th season. This fan base is tired of being fed a line. And it's why I put that quote up on the screen. It's why we talked about what Sean Payton said about the running game and about in-game adjustments and things like that with the running game. And he didn't say squat. He rambled. It was like, you might as well have had a drunk politician, right? He didn't say anything. And I think that there are some fans that just knee-jerk react to everything. So the people that are out there saying we need to start Stidham against the Bucs.
Stop it. For what?
You just don't do that. But I think there are also, one of the things I've always enjoyed about covering the Broncos here in Denver is that there is a massive amount of the fan base that is smart. They understand the team and they understand football and they understand the NFL. And so they understand when Sean Payton is blowing smoke. They understand it. And I don't know, maybe the fan base in New Orleans wasn't that way. I don't know. I've never been there in terms of living there and being a part of the Saints fan base and being around them. But I can tell you that the Broncos fan base has intelligence. It has a strong IQ. And so they know when they're being fed a bill of goods by their head coach. And so maybe Sean Payton's not used to that. Like I said, I don't know. Maybe it's not the same with the Saints fans. Maybe it is. But he needs to recognize that this fan base is going to wind up turning on him if he doesn't just come out and start actually giving answers to questions. And it's not even so much about saying what the fan base wants to hear. That's not what I'm asking Sean Payton to do.
Right.
What I'm asking him to do is just be honest and be able to say, hey, here's what happened, or here's what didn't happen, or here's what we want to be able to work on. And I fully respect what Troy Renck told us about an hour ago when he said, well, Nate, here's part of it, is recognize that they watch this kinds of stuff, and then they get together on Wednesday, and that's when they start to address it. And he probably didn't want to say anything in that press conference before he's had a chance to talk to some of his coaches or things like that. I respect that, and I think Troy's right about part of it. But then make sure at some point this week that Sean Payton is actually transparent and honest to a fan base that will absolutely have his back and Bo's and Pat's and everybody else's, if they feel like they have something to back, to be a part of, and to prop up, and to say, I believe in what this team is doing. And right now, Sean Payton's not doing that. He hasn't given you or me anything to believe in.
I don't have much to add about that. Obviously, that is the
and
reality.
Hey, I managed to do it without raising my voice.
Hey, well, look at you.
I tried,
look at you.
folks. Week
to week improvement.
This
that's
guy
what we're
ain't
looking
coming
for,
through the
right?
door.
I mean, that's the idea. Week to week improvement. It will be tough.
What other issues can I look at?
They will.
Let's see. Hold on. Let's find out. You go ahead.
Oh, you're looking at a magazine issue. I thought you were talking about other issues in general. It's like, how much time do you have? We have to get out of the show.
Oh, back here, I got Willis McGahee and Noshawn.
Yeah, they're not coming through the door either. Danny Bailey is the man in the booth that makes everything work. Thanks to Troy Renck of the Denver Post for joining us as always. We'll have an opportunity to break more of this down with you. Thanks for all the comments, by the way. We do read them. We do pay attention. We do try to get them up on the screen and address them when we can as well. And we'll continue to do that. So keep them coming. Click and subscribe. You know the drill. However you consume the show, we greatly appreciate it. We love bringing you an unvarnished truth and understanding how this all works, trying to just make things a little bit more palatable, because if you understand why things happen the way they do, you're not as surprised, you're not as frustrated, and maybe you're not as upset as Nate here.
Or maybe open these Bud Lights.
Or maybe you are. He's going to get to that. We're going to get out of here. For Danny Bailey and Nate Lundy, I'm Sean Drotar. This is Mile High Sports.